Hi third graders, I hope that you're ready for the next two chapters of Rump. Chapter 8 is way too short, so we're going to do chapter 8 and chapter 9 today. I'm really glad that so many of you are enjoying this story. I really love it too, so I'm really glad that we can enjoy it together. So let's go back and see what we read yesterday. Oh yeah, gold means food. So Rump figured out that he can spin straw into gold using his spinning wheel. And those two bullies that have been giving Rump a hard time, their names are Frederick and Bruno. They saw Rump spinning the gold through Rump's window. They were there to bully him or something. So he saw them running off, and remember, the miller is the person who rations out the food, and for some reason last time that Rump went to go get his rations, the miller just gave him a big bag of dust. So I'm thinking that maybe Frederick and Bruno spilled the beans to the miller, because the last thing that the miller said to Rump was, gold means food. Chapter 8. Gold means secrets. I did not know what to do. We needed food. The miller had the food and he wanted gold. I had lots of gold, spun into perfect little coils with my mother's spinning wheel, spun with magic that Red insisted was dangerous. Where are the rations? Gran asked. I was empty-handed, having thrown away the sack full of sawdust. I suppose I didn't find enough gold, I said, looking at my feet. Well, I'll give that miller a piece of my mind. Gran rose up from her chair, then staggered and fell back. Gran! I rushed to her, but she waved me away. Only a little dizzy spell. She closed her eyes and took a few breaths. Her hands shook. She needed food. I would have to take some of the gold to the miller. Maybe I could mix the coils with some dirt and other gold flecks and pebbles from the mines. He might not notice the difference, but a dark feeling rose in me. If the miller was as greedy as he seemed, he would notice. So I kept the gold hidden and hoped that the miller had only made a mistake with a sack of sawdust. We will make do, Gran said. We have the chickens and the goat. We won't starve. We killed one of our 2 hens. The meat would have to last us until the next rations day. Gran and I ate in silence. Eating the chickens should have been a celebration, a great luxury, but we were both melancholy. My gaze kept wandering over to the spinning wheel and to my bed where the gold was hidden. Gran followed my gaze. I hope you haven't touched that wheel, she said. You don't know how to work it properly, and you'll hurt yourself. Did my mother hurt herself? I asked. The question flew out of my mouth without warning. Gran froze with a bit of chicken raised to her mouth. Excuse me, I have bad allergies today. Gran froze with a bit of chicken raised to her mouth. She lowered her hands. Why would you ask such a thing? Why didn't you tell me she was from yonder? Who told you that? Gran asked. Red? Red, yes, well, her grandmother. What did my mother spin? I asked. Gran stiffened. What did she spin? What do most people usually spin? Why have you... She looked from the wheel back to me. I could see her struggling, trying to decide what to say. Your mother spun trouble, she said, and then left it on my hands. Is that how you think of me? I asked. As the trouble she left? Oh, child. Rump, I shouted. My name is Rump. Gran's eyes were shiny with tears. You are my grandson, Rump. I have always loved you. I have always tried to protect you, and I will do my best to protect you now. Do not concern yourself with what your mother or her spinning wheel. I will only bring you sorrow. It will only bring you sorrow. I didn't ask anymore. I felt strange, like things had shifted around me when I wasn't looking, but I didn't know what it meant. The strangeness crept into my dreams that night. A woman was spinning by the fireplace. She had long black hair and green eyes, like mine. I had never seen this woman before, but I knew she was my mother. She was spinning straw into gold. She smiled at the gold at first, and the glittering skeins piled around her feet like a golden pool. But as the pile grew larger, her smile faded. Her spinning slowed and seemed to be difficult, but still she spun. The pile grew and grew and grew, spreading wider and rising higher. When the gold reached my mother's chin, she looked panicked, like she was submerged in water and didn't know how to swim. When it reached her eyes, they were full of fear. Finally, the gold covered her whole head, and I couldn't see her anymore. But the pile of gold still grew. When it reached the ceiling, I woke up. Chapter 9, Gold Found, Treasure Lost. So scholars, in Chapter 8, I'm thinking that Gran found out that Rump has been spinning, and she kind of has the feeling that he's not just spinning wool into yarn, and Rump got the idea that maybe his mother had this special gift too. And his dream kind of let him know that that trick or that gift led to trouble. So let's keep reading. Chapter 9. Gold found, treasure lost. Rations day came again at last. I went outside, eager to get an early start, and was showered with sparkling white. Winter had arrived. At first I was happy because a fresh blanket of snow made the world look peaceful and new. Nothing bad could happen in such fluffy white. But then the cold bit my skin, and I remembered what winter really meant. It meant that soon the pass up the mountain would be closed. No one would be able to get through to trade gold for food. It meant slow, grueling work in a frozen mine. It meant cold and hunger, more hunger than usual. Milk gave only drippings of milk. So remember, Milk is the name of his goat. Milk only gave drippings of milk. Our one remaining hen had no eggs, and nothing bellowed at me because his hooves were frozen to the ground. When I finally pawed him loose with icy fingers, he kicked me from behind, and I landed face first in snow. I hate winter. When I arrived at the mines, Frederick threw a snowball at my face. Bruno got me on the back of the head. Then a tree branch dumped a load of snow down the neck of my shirt. Winter hates me. It was a long day in the mines. I kept myself from going crazy by making up rhymes. Frozen fingers, frozen toes. Where are you, gold? Nobody knows. Spin a sock, spin a hat, spin a stupid ugly rat, a furry cat, a winged bat. Spin them in a nasty stew. I like the sound of that. I went to the mill for my rations and waited in the long line with a grumbling stomach. I had a little more gold than usual this week. I think it helped that the pixies were now sleeping for the winter. If gold meant food, then the miller would have to give me my rations. But when I reached the front of the line, he simply looked down at me over his bulging belly and said, "No gold, no food." His eyes had a greedy gleam. He knew. I understood my dream now. I hadn't spun that much gold, but it was already choking me. When I came home, Gran was still in bed. Her eyes were open, but she just stared at the ceiling. "Gran?" She blinked, but didn't look at me or speak. "Gran, are you all right?" I walked to her and placed my hand on her cheek. I pulled away quickly. Her skin was so hot it burned my cold palm. I stumbled backward and fell, then ran outside and down to the road to Red's house. I didn't know anywhere else to go. I pounded on the door, hoping someone was home. A woman swung open the door, brandishing a wooden spoon. Red's mother. She looked fierce, just like Red. But she gave a start when she saw me panting and crying. "Rump?" Red peered out from behind her mother. "My Gran, something's wrong, please." Red's mother threw down her spoon and grabbed her cloak. "Come," she said. Red followed, and we ran back to the cottage. When we walked in, Red's mother went right to Gran. "Elizabeth," she gently touched Gran's forehead. "Red, go outside and get a bucket of snow." I stood by the bed while Red's mother looked at Gran. Gran opened her eyes and made a little gurgling sound, but she didn't speak. It was like she was trying to say something, but the words were heavy and got twisted on her tongue. "What's wrong with her?" I asked. Red's mother didn't look at me. She's old. But what's wrong with her? Oh, child. She looked at me now, and her eyes were full of pity. I thought I might be sick. No one can keep going forever. She's ill. Her brain isn't working right. Her brain? I needed to help Gran's brain. Can you help her? Will she get better? She gave a tragic smile. We'll just have to see. My whole body sagged, and she touched my shoulder. It will be all right. Red and her mother placed cold cloths on Gran's face and rubbed warm ones on her feet. They boiled water and the leftover chicken bones and spooned the broth into Gran's mouth. A lot just dripped down her cheeks and chin, but Gran seemed a little more awake while we fed her. She looked at me, or at least I thought she did, and then she fell asleep. She should sleep for the night, said Red's mother. She picked up her cloak and went to the door. I'll be back in the morning. Come, Red. I'll be there in a moment. Red's mother nodded and shut the door. Red only waited a few seconds before she did what I knew she would. Boss me. I know what you're thinking, but you can't. How do you know what I'm thinking? I'm an idiot, remember? I don't think that much. Red's eyes saddened. I don't think you're an idiot, Rump. Well, you'd be the only one, including myself. I was an idiot. Why did I have to spin that straw into gold? I should have listened to Gran, but maybe trading the gold for food could make her better. Rump, don't trade the gold. What makes you think I would? I glared at Red, and she backed away a little. Red backing away from me. Things will turn out all right, she said, but not if you trade that gold. It's not safe. I sat by the fire, picked up bits of straw, and flung them into the flames. Just go away. Rump, just leave me alone, I shouted. Red breathed in sharply and opened the door. A cold gust blew in and made me shiver. I take it back. You are an idiot. And slammed it in my face. I sat in front of the fire until it was cold ash. I didn't sleep all night, and when the village bell chimed for the mining day to begin, I didn't go. I stayed by Gran's side and fed her broth. She still didn't speak or look at me. When I got the broth in her mouth and she swallowed. She needed more food. She couldn't get well without more food. When Gran fell asleep after dark, I went to my bed and took out 3 skeins of gold. I wrapped them in a dirty rag and tucked them inside my jacket. I walked outside and headed toward the mill. Gold meant food. Opal was the one who answered the door. She stared at me with a blank face. I want to see the miller, I said. Her tongue stretched and wound around her mouth. What for? She asked. It was the first time I've ever heard Opal speak. She sounded annoyed. I have something for him, something he'll want to trade. Me. Rations were yesterday. Father doesn't trade unless it's rations day. He will want to trade me now, I said. Her tongue flicked out. Come back next rations day. She started to close the door, but a deep voice sounded behind her. Opal, who are you talking to? Opal shrank back in the doorway, and Oswald, the miller, filled it up with his huge girth. He was almost as wide as he was tall. His belt strained on the last knot. Oh, it's you then, is it? We've got no rations for you, and they're all tightening our belts. Be gone. I tried to speak, but my tongue felt heavy inside my mouth, like it had swelled and hardened. I figured what I carried would speak louder than words anyway, so I took the bundle from my jacket and revealed the gold. Quickly, the miller stepped close, blocking the gold from Opal's view. He looked from side to side, making sure no one else was around, then lowered his big nose to my bundle. His fat face spread wide, and the gold glinted in his greedy eyes. He reached for the skeins, but I pulled away. I thought of all the things I could demand, all the food. I would ask him to take me into the storehouse and let me choose as much as I wanted. Honey, oats, apples, onions, carrots. He would mill my grain into a fine powder. But my tongue was so heavy and the words would not come. What will you give me? I said in a strangled voice. What will you give me for this? Clever. The miller smiled, as if he felt my struggle. Clever boy, he said. Opal, go back and get a sack of flour and a sack of oats, 10 pounds each. I wanted to say that wasn't fair. I had 3 skeins of gold. That should be worth more than 20 pounds of food. I should get salt, honey, and at least a little meat, but I couldn't say it. It was as if the gold were pressing down on my tongue. When Opal came back with the food, she placed it at my feet. She looked from father to me. She stared at the bundle in my arms, now covered up. "Leave us, Opal," said Oswald. She licked her lips and then hurried away. I held out the gold like a dumb puppet, and the miller snatched it from my hands. "Such a clever boy," said the miller, adding sugar to his oily voice. But instead of sounding sweet, it sounded rancid. I heaped the food onto my back and took it home. I made a runny mush with the oats and held a spoonful of Gran's mouth. She twitched when the food touched her mouth and turned away. "It's food, Gran. You have to eat." "Where?" Her question just trailed away. "Shh, just eat." I spooned the food into her mouth, willing her to get better. Gran's fever raged for the next 3 days. I made more of the oat mush, biscuits, and some bread soaked in milk, but she wouldn't eat. She was so thin I thought she might sink right into the mattress. Soon she would be just straw. I kept talking to Gran aloud, pressing a cool cloth to her forehead and hoping that she would respond. One day faded into another as I told her stories, all the stories she had told me about witches and trolls and wolves and ogres. I talked late into the night until I had repeated every story I knew a dozen times. So tonight I told a real story, the story about me. I told it just the way she would have told me, how I was born and my name and my unknown destiny. "And now I have a spinning wheel," I said as I reached the end, "from my mother, and I can spin gold. I can spin straw into gold just like my mother." "Did she show you her gold? Did she tell you about her magic?" "She gave it to me." It suddenly struck me how different things would be if my mother had lived. All that was wrong could be set right. I didn't know my whole name, and I'd understand my destiny. Gran's eyes flew open. She grabbed my arm with a surprisingly firm grip. She gurgled a little, trying to speak. My heart leapt. Gran was getting well. "Gran," I asked, "what is it?" She gurgled some more, and then, with great effort, she said my name. Wump, my boy. "Yes, Gran, I'm here." I held her frail, gnarled hands tight in mine. Gran's eyes didn't move, but they filled with tears, which rolled down the sides of her wrinkled cheeks. "You spin." Slowly, she raised a trembling hand and placed it on my chest, right over my heart. "Spin gold here." She tapped on my chest. "Gold here." She closed her eyes but gently muttered, "Spin, spin, spin." I tried to spoon more food into her mouth, but she couldn't take it. She kept muttering, "Spin, spin, spin." Soon, Gran was asleep again. In the morning, she did not wake. So that's a pretty sad ending to chapter 9. But we will get back to our book tomorrow in chapter 10. Chapter 10 is titled Unfair Bargains. All right, scholars, I hope that you're still enjoying the book, even though it kind of had a sad ending today. And I will see you tomorrow. Bye.